Hi, everyone. Welcome to this office hour session on how to keep track of what's running in your Gremlin team. My name's Andre. I'm a senior reliability specialist here at Gremlin. Just want to do some quick notes before we get started. This is an interactive webinar. I want to hear from you as much as you want to hear from me. So please feel free to enter any questions again in the chat or the Q&A panel, and I'll make sure to get to them afterwards. This webinar will be recorded. The recording will be made available after the webinar. So feel free to share it to anybody who you think might enjoy it, and also for rewatching later. Also, if you're new to office hours, hi, welcome. This is a monthly series that we do on various topics related to Gremlin. We focus on a bunch of different things like Kubernetes reliability, detected risks, so on. So if you're interested in any of that, we have a sign-up link available at gremlin.com/office hours that you can go to see what we have coming up and sign up for future sessions. So I went a little bit too fast. All right, so quick look at our planned agenda for today. I'll start with a short presentation talking about the different tools and features available in Gremlin for managing schedules and for scheduling experiments. I'll do a quick overview of what this looks like in Gremlin with a demo, and then I'll leave time at the end for Q&A to answer any questions you might have about the demo, about the feature, or even just about Gremlin in general. So we covered this a bit back in January during our office hours session on reporting. So if you joined that one, this one might look a little bit familiar, but I want to dive a bit deeper into it today. So if you're not familiar, if you haven't been watching us recently, we recently added 3 new screens in Gremlin, now running, what's scheduled, and what ran. And these are meant to really help you see every activity that's being done or that has been done in your Gremlin team. Reliabilities tests, experiments, scenarios, and failure flags. Not just when they ran, but also who ran them and when they will run if they're scheduled to run in the future. And if you're familiar with our reports, you know that those give you a historical view of the things that have been done in your team in the past. But this is always current. These screens are meant to show you what's happening right now in real time. So without any further delay, I just want to jump right into them. The first one we'll look at is called Now Running. This is meant to show you everything that's happening in your Gremlin team right at this moment, including which tests you and your teammates are running. You notice we separate these by type of test. So you have reliability tests, which you start on your services. You have scenarios, you have your experiments, and then of course you have your failure flags. If you're not familiar with failure flags, those are experiments that you can run within application code. And you can see this in the name column. So we have our reliability test category at the top here. Below that, we have our scenarios. And within that, you can get a really good view of what is being done and who's doing it. And also you get that nice big red halt button. So if you do decide you want to stop one of these tests, you can do so from here too. And additionally, you get to see which services or systems you're impacting, right? So since this is a reliability test, I have my service there at the top. I can click on it to go see that specific service if I want to see what other tests are being run on it. For a scenario and experiment, this will include our typical host, containers, and Kubernetes resources. And for failure flags, this will show the applications that you're currently testing. And then we have how and when each test was started. Sorry, I lost my place there for a second. How and when each test was started under the source column. So generally, this will show one of 3 things. Manual, meaning somebody went into that service and clicked the run button themselves. Run all, which meant that somebody went in and bravely went and clicked run all. So the full suite of tests is being run for that service. And then scheduled, which means that we had this test scheduled to run previously or in advance. And so Gremlin started that test as part of that schedule. Again, we do have that halt button next to each of the different actions that are being done. We also have that halt all button in the top right corner that's just always present no matter which screen you're on. So if at any time you decide, I don't actually want to run this experiment or I don't want to run it right now, you can go in, click halt, and that'll immediately roll back the running experiment and return your systems back to normal. One last thing I want to mention that you'll see in the demo but isn't shown in the screenshot, the navigation bar on the left side of the web app, you'll see these screens as entries in that navigation bar, but more specifically, the now running has a little badge next to it. And this is to show you how many activities are actively running in your team. So for example, in this screenshot, you see we have 2 different things, a reliability test and a scenario. This badge would show 2 items. And this updates in real time no matter which page you're on in the app. So you'll always know if you have something running in your team. So this page is pretty straightforward, but has a bunch of great information crammed into it and is really useful for day-to-day work. For me personally, if I'm doing any testing or any other things in Gremlin, I'll run a suite of tests on the service and just keep this page open in the background so I can keep track of its progress. So jumping ahead to the next one is the what ran screen. And I like to think of this as your, first thing in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you've logged into Gremlin, and you want to see what's been done on your team since yesterday. That's really where this screen shines. It's showing you what has been done within your team, which services have been tested, which tests have been run, so you can get a good sense of where your testing progress is for the day ahead. So what does the screen actually show? This shows every test that's been running the team over the past week, listed chronologically. So this is great for getting that quick look of what's happened since you last logged in, but it's also good for finding tests that have failed. So for example, I have a bunch of tests here that were attempted, which means they never actually ran, even though they really should have. This is my cue to go click into that service or click into those results, see why the test failed, make any adjustments if I need to, and then try to retry those tests so I can get them to ideally pass, or if not, just give me any kind of result. And so like the other screens, this shows our reliability tests, scenarios, experiments, and failure flags. It also shows us who or what started the test, what initiated it, and when it ran. And every single element in this table is clickable. So if you want to see what the test does, you can just click on its name. If you want more information about the service, you can click on the service. If you click on the result, it brings you to that very specific test run and the outcomes of it, where you can check things like error messages, logs, and agent logs, and so on. And if you click on the source, you get brought to the actual schedule itself. So you can see when this test was scheduled to run, which suite of tests it's a part of, and so on. Again, lots of information crammed into a really small screen, but this is just really good for getting that backwards view into what happened over the past week. And then last but not least is what schedule. If what's ran is your view into the past, this is your view into the future. It shows you everything that your team has scheduled to run within the next week, including when it's planned to start, which systems it's going to impact, and whether it's a recurring or one-off schedule. And there's one kind of important thing that I'd like to highlight here, and that's the estimated to start column on the right. The reason this says estimated and not just start time has to do with how tests are actually scheduled to run on services in Gremlin. I'll talk a little bit more about this during the next slide, or during the demo rather. But for now, just know that this is the screen that you want to go to when you want to know which tests are going to run, when the next test will run, and which services you have scheduled. Again, this includes everything from scheduled experiments to scenarios to reliability tests that you have scheduled to run on your services. And again, if you want to see the schedule for a specific service, you can just go click into that service and they'll bring you to this screen. By default, if you enable auto scheduling, Gremlin will only schedule reliability tests that have passed at least once. If you want to run them all, you'd have to go and change that radio button to click all reliability tests. The reason for that is mostly as a safety precaution. If you know that a test has succeeded, then it makes sense to schedule it so that Gremlin repeatedly runs it and checks for regressions. Make sure that nothing changes in your service that causes those tests to fail in the future. But if you're doing exploratory testing, or if you've just set up Gremlin and you want to get that comprehensive overview of all of your services, you can always come in here and click all reliability tests just to make sure that you're getting that full coverage. So my mistake. Going back to why we have estimated start times, there's a reason that we provide estimates. So as you can kind of see here, we have that testing window at the bottom of that screen. Basically, you earmark a chunk of time during which Gremlin is meant to run its reliability tests, but you might not know exactly when those tests run. And the reason for this is we're getting kind of technical into how Gremlin runs tests, but essentially each test has a small wind up and cool down period where it's doing things like orchestrating the test, observing your service's baseline metrics, communicating with the agent that's running on that target system. And once the test is done, bringing your system back to normal after the test is finished. And again, observing it to make sure that its metrics are back to its baselines. Each test does have an estimated runtime though, and that's what we use to determine when the subsequent test will start. So as an example, the CPU test has 3 steps. Each one runs for 5 minutes. There's also a little 5-minute cooldown period between each step, so CPU usage goes back down to normal. Sorry, 5 seconds, not 5 minutes. So this only ends up slightly more than 15 minutes. But when you factor in the startup time, the initial health check monitoring, and teardown times, we rather overestimate slightly than underestimate. So essentially what happens is you have all these tests that are scheduled to run. We take that estimated runtime, add them up, and from there, we determine when a test is estimated to run during that window. Just to clarify, we won't run any tests outside of that window. That window is fixed. So if it ends up that a test takes longer to run than expected for whatever reason, and the other tests land outside that window, we just won't run them. Recommendation there is to either increase the window length or go in and see what happened with those tests. Maybe one of your systems was unavailable, so Gremlin retried the test. It could be anything like that. And just ensure that you're allocating enough time to be able to finish those tests. And I hadn't clicked through my slides, so your details are all there. Essentially, your testing windows can be anywhere from 2 to 23 hours. We set them to 4 by default. That's more time than it actually needs. But again, we like to overestimate than underestimate and have some tests not run. But you can go in and configure these for any service that you like, just to make them appropriate to your needs and your testing patterns. So that was a quick run through. Now I'm going to switch over to a live demo so you can see what this looks like in action. I do have a demo environment set up that I could use, but I think this actually works better if you see it in a realistic environment. So you're all going to get a sneak peek at Gremlin's staging environment. This is where we dog food all of our new features and do regular infrastructure testing. This is also where a lot of our engineers do their work. So there's always something happening here. There's always some tests running, something being done, or something that has run in the past. So let's go back to that example where it's the first thing in the morning. I just grabbed my cup of coffee, I booted up my laptop, and I logged into Gremlin. And now I want to see what experiments or tests are planned for today. So I'm going to head over to what's scheduled. And again, this page shows you every activity that you have scheduled to start in the near future up to 1 week from today. So for example, rather, each activity is grouped into its categories. So we have our services, we have our scenarios, we have experiments. These are ones that some of my coworkers have created. So we get a bit of variety in what they are and who created them. But you can see that for each activity type, we can always click in and get more information on which one we want to see in particular. So as an example, let's say I want to see this host service with load balancing. What is its schedule like? I just need to click on the schedule and it brings me right back to that screen that you saw earlier of how to auto schedule your test and how to select which category of test Gremlin runs. And if you want to go back and check another one, you can do so easily. If you want to see information about the service itself, you can always click on that too. That'll bring you right to the service's overview page, or rather its queue page, where you can see for that specific service, what's been run recently, what's running now, and what's coming up next. Again, you get that estimated start time based off of the runtime of each test. We show that here, but we also show that on the what's scheduled page itself. So again, this is a really good high-level view of everything that's going to be running in your team within the next week. So if you want to get a sense of what's coming up, what you might need to focus on, and which of your systems are being impacted, what's scheduled is definitely the place to go to get that information. All right. So now, remember how I mentioned that the Now Running tab has a badge that shows you how many items are running? You can actually see that here. So just right at a glance, I know that my teammates are running 3 different types of tests. It doesn't tell me exactly which ones, but I could get a sense that, there's activity happening in my team. Folks are in here, they're doing things, they're testing things. So if I want to get a more detailed breakdown of that, I just click on Now Running. And this shows me everything that's happening in my Gremlin team, all of the reliability tests that are running, the scenarios and experiments that are running. And if my team's running any failure flags, this is our serverless application-based fault injection tool. It'll show me these as well. Right now, we only have experiments running, so that's all that's expanded. But you can imagine that if we had other things running, the other categories would be showing similar output as well. And again, just like before, if you want to see specifics about the test, you can always just click on it. In this case, I want to learn more about this particular CPU experiment, so I can click on it and I can get an overview. This is a really basic test that one of my coworkers ran. It's only impacting 1 core. It's only consuming 1% of CPU capacity. It's also running for a very long time. So I'm just going to assume this is some sort of internal testing thing that they're doing, and I'm not going to touch it. But again, it's a really quick, really easy way to go in and see what's being done, who's doing it, and which of my systems it's being impacted. Same deal here. This brings me right back to the screen. But for the actual schedule of what initiated this, I can click on the source and get a really comprehensive sense of what's being scheduled and what's going to run in the future. So now running is a pretty simple, pretty straightforward screen, but lots of information packed in here. So last but not least, let's say the day is over and I want to review all the work that I put into reliability testing, or maybe my boss is asking me for a recap of, hey, what did you work on today? Or what did you work on this week? So all I need to do is pull up the what ran screen. And like I mentioned before, this shows you all of the activities from the past week across your team. That includes the results of each activity that was done, any targets that were impacted by it, or rather, which targets were impacted by it, and when it was started. So again, we have our reliability test, our scenarios, our experiments. And we actually do have some failure flags. So some of my teammates have run failure flags, probably just to test to make sure that things are working correctly. But in any of these, I can always just click on it, go in, see more details about the actual test case itself. In this case, the page isn't loading or it's taking its sweet time. There we go. So yeah, I can immediately see the results of what was run, its run history, the effects, or rather the type of experiment that was run. In this case, we have a failure flag or a serverless application called test app name. We had a failure flag within it that was named inbound. And so for any request that went through inbound, we added 2 seconds or 2000 milliseconds of latency. And I can see that that was delivered rather to 3 different invocations of this serverless application. So similar to that, we have our results, we have the source, what initiated it, and we have links directly to the targets and to the test itself. So regardless of what it is that our teammates ran, you can always use the screen to click in and get that more detailed view of the test that was run, what the outcome was, and when it was ran. So what this is really good for also is for planning. So for example, here I see a bunch of these tests were attempted, but they didn't complete. So this tells me that I really should focus on rerunning these tests. First, I want to click into the results, see what happened, see why they failed, ideally fix that, then go back and rerun them to get an actual result from it. Whether it's a pass, fail, doesn't matter. I just want to get something that isn't an attempted. So the screen is really good for that as well. Same thing for scenarios. With scenarios, you have the ability to add what we call health checks. These are automated checks that test your systems to see that they're still responsive, that they're still performing well, even while an experiment is running. We also use those health checks to determine whether the scenario succeeded or failed. So as an example, we have this child service test scenario that got a result of unsure. This means that Gremlin couldn't tell whether our service actually passed the test because we didn't have a health check configured. So what I'd want to do is go in, add a health check to the scenarios, rerun it, so I'm able to actually get a concrete result of whether it passed or failed. I can also just manually enter the outcome of the test. Gremlin lets you specify whether a scenario passed or failed yourself. So if you want, you can come in after the scenario is finished and manually enter that pass or fail criteria. Of course, this page isn't loading for me. Again, this is staging, so it's not quite as well polished as our production environment, but hopefully this gives you a good sense of how you can use this page to really sort of get in deep and see what all has been done within your Gremlin team. So that was a very quick look at all of our different scheduling features. So like I mentioned, these are all available immediately to anybody with a Gremlin account. You can go in right now and start using these features right away. If not, you can always get a free trial at gremlin.com/trial. This was a fairly short session today just because these features, we try to make them as digestible and straightforward as possible. So you don't have to do a lot of guessing or a lot of digging around. Everything's just available for you right there. You can get started using it immediately and start seeing the impacts from it. And if you found this session valuable or helpful, we'd love to see you in one of our upcoming future ones. Like I mentioned, we have our future sessions posted at gremlin.com/office hours. So you can always go there, see what's coming up, and sign up for sessions that are coming up that match your interests. We're also excited to get feedback from folks. So if you have an idea for a session that you'd like us to cover or a topic that you'd like us to cover, definitely let us know. This is our evolving sessions that we find topics for continuously. And we really value your feedback. So again, if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, definitely don't hesitate to request it. But in the meantime, though, I'm here to answer any questions you might have or to show you any features that you'd like to take a look at again. So if you have any questions or have any requests, feel free to enter them into that Q&A panel or into the chat box, and I'd be happy to go over them. Otherwise, I'll be here for a few more minutes. So again, feel free to speak up. Let us know what might interest you and what you want to take a look at again. Yeah, that's actually a great request. So we had a request come in that said, would love to have an office hour session on regional AWS testing and best practices. We have, I think, done a session on, or we have a session planned on our black hole experiment, which would simulate a network outage and can be scaled up to a regional level. If not, then I will definitely add that to our idea list, and we can tackle that in a future session. Any other questions or requests from folks? Keep in mind that if you do end up thinking of a question after the session ends, that's not the end of it. You can always reach out to us by going to gremlin.com/contact. I also think that there's going to be a survey after this session that you can fill out and enter any requests there as well. So, if the webinar ends and you didn't get a chance to ask the question that you wanted to, don't worry, you always have other ways of reaching out to us. All right. I'm not seeing anything else come in, so I think we can wrap up. Again, this was a fairly short session, but I hope the information was helpful for you and really useful. And now you actually know how to go in and use those screens to their full potential. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us if you have any questions or ideas for future sessions or requests. Again, these office hour sessions are for you. I'm the one giving it, but they're for your use. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any ideas. In the meantime, hope this was helpful and have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining.